Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a 35-year veteran of martial arts, a USA Taekwondo certified referee working in both Poomsae and Sparring. He has 4 sons, 3 of which are also black belts. The 4th will be testing for his soon. He's been the editor of Taekwondo Life magazine since 2016, and before that was a lead correspondent for Taekwondo Times. He has also hosted the Taekwondo Life podcast for 3 years. Please welcome Mr. Marc Zirogiannis. Did I get the name right?
You got it perfectly.
Nice.
Very good. Thank you for having me, Brian.
Oh, welcome. Welcome to the show. What we do with all my guests, I want to jump back to the beginning. I want to know what was that first spark? What led to that first interest in martial arts?
Okay, great question. So for me, I grew up at a time that martial arts practice was not really widely available for young people. I had an older brother who was insanely interested in the martial arts. Probably never a Saturday at my house that Kung Fu theater wasn't on all day.
Nice.
And we had a local martial arts dojang. They wouldn't take kids, but my brother was really gifted, and they let him try out as a teenager, and they allowed him to join the school. But I was too young, so I was really anxious to get on the mat, but they wouldn't let me. They would just let me watch.
Wow.
And I sat there and just waited my turn until I got old enough to get involved. And I think as that happened, I absorbed a lot, and the interest sparked. And by the time that I got involved, things had started, the landscape here had started to change a lot, opened up a lot more. The Karate Kid happened, right? And
Yep.
a lot more dojangs opened up for families and children. And that really started the whole thing. I got involved through college. I was through a collegiate program. And then after that, and for the better part of my adult life, I've been involved in various aspects of Taekwondo, whether it be training, whether it be teaching. And then, of course, when I had my kids, really thought it was important for them, mostly because of the environment and the attitude and the lessons that they would learn.
Okay, so that first school, was that a Taekwondo school?
Yeah, so at the time it was called Korean Karate.
Yep.
So it was prior to, really the term Taekwondo was not widely known, and there was a great attempt on the part of Taekwondo practitioners here to be able to get people to sort of understand that it was a martial art that came from Korea. And I think that the attempt was to use the term karate because there was more familiarity with it.
Right.
So it was a more Japanese based form of Taekwondo. It took a lot of roots from Shotokan, a lot of deep stances, a lot of more strong movement as opposed to more fluid movement. So that was my first. That's a Cheongdaekwon for those that are familiar. I began studying under the Cheongdaekwon style. Under the lineage is Grandmaster Duck Sung, who wrote the book Korean Karate. But yes, and then it evolved into Olympic style, Kukkiwon style Taekwondo under Jidokwon with Grandmaster Wyche Park.
Okay, yeah. So my first Taekwondo school in 92 was under Cheongdaekwon, and it was under Grandmaster Byungjik Ro. And
Wow.
Then my instructor's instructor was actually Grandmaster Mu Young Yun. And then the second school I switched to was still under Grandmaster Mu Young Yun, and after years they ended up switching to, actually no, I take that back. It was Sung Mu Kwon. Then it switched under Byungjik Ro. Then it switched to Chung Mu Kwon. So, and now they're actually under Mudak Kwon. So it's changed 3 times since I've been in it in 92.
Absolutely. And we have some very good friends here in this area who are under that same style.
So which, I'm just curious, just being a fellow Taekwondoist, which patterns, which forms did you guys do? Did you do the palge?
We did the palge. And then of course, when I switched to Kukkiwon style, we were doing taeguk's and those. Now, actually, I do both. I mean, being involved in the referee world and sport Poomsae, obviously that's all the taeguk's. But I still do the palgaes, and I think that there's a lot of value to those. And many of the taeguk's and many of the higher belt, black belt forms of the Kukiwon adopted really have a lot of the same patterns that have been incorporated into different forms.
Yeah, we've never switched to the taeguk's. My instructor was never a fan of those, so we're strictly palgae, and I've been doing those since 1992. So
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's kind of cool.
Very, very, very cool. Yes, it was a great way to get started, and even after a lot of years of not doing them, when I went back to doing them, a lot of that muscle memory came back, and it was a lot of fun.
So thinking back to that very first school, those maybe the first 3, 4, 5 classes, once you got into it, what was it that drew you in? What made you want to continue and want to stick with it?
That's an excellent question, because I think a lot of times what draws you in isn't what keeps you there. It can be, but for me, it was, I would tell you that there were a couple of things, but one of them was really the relationships. I really found myself at home among the people. I found it to be very inviting, and I found myself really, challenged in a lot of ways. But it's always been for me about the community. There was a time that after I got my black belt and I left for a little while to explore other things. I went to a kickboxing gym and did some other things. The martial arts part of it the athleticism part of it was great, but there's just something about the community of a martial arts community in a dojang that is really has been my second family for 35 years.
Okay. What's something that stands out still to this day that you remember about that first instructor?
So this is really interesting, but my first instructor was Robert Jenkins Clark. And when I started taking Taekwondo, he was already in his 80s, and he wasn't, obviously teaching all of the classes, but he was the head instructor. So I didn't really know too much about him. And I was standing in front of the building. We did it in a gymnasium. The classes were in a college gymnasium and on wooden floors. And I see this beautiful brand new Lamborghini pull up. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that is the coolest thing. And the top pulls, the doors go up. And I see this, 80-year-old guy come out of there, and I'm like, who is that guy? And that guy was the Taekwondo instructor. He was our master, and he was one of the most interesting, and he was a PhD in economics. He was a world traveler. He had studied in Korea. He was really a dynamic guy, and I just found that it just, one of the things that always reminded me is you can't judge a book by its cover, right? I mean, in every way, shape, and form. And he was probably one of the most powerful and interesting people that I've ever known.
Wow, that's kind of cool. So when did the competition part of it start for you, and what kind of drew you to that? Was that something, were you involved in sports when you were younger, or was it the competition in martial arts something new to you?
No, I had been involved in community sports, playing soccer. I was on my varsity soccer team competing, but it was just something different. There's just something different about martial arts competition. Before I got involved, in the world of sport Poomsae, being involved in sparring with the Tae Kwon, and then in Kukiwon style. I was never great at it, but I did enjoy it. It was a great opportunity to test myself. It was a great opportunity to push myself to another level. But I love the competition atmosphere, and that's why at a certain point, people have different skill sets. I'm probably not the greatest competitor. I'm probably not the greatest coach, but I really enjoyed officiating, and I got heavily involved in the structured world of that training and learning that, because I really to this day love to be around competitions, even though I'm not, again, it's particularly age wise now, it's much tougher, but I never was the highest level competitor.
Okay. So I know that over the years, there's been a lot of controversy about some of like the electronic scoring thing. So are you more of a fan just personally of the old school scoring with flags, or do you actually like the electronic scoring that they use?
I think that the biggest issue has been, and the biggest controversy has been that, people are used to certain things. I think that there's a great value in the electronics. I just think that the execution needs to be better. And I think that there's a lot of movement that's been made to do that. I think that 2016 in particular, when they made the dramatic moves, athletes will do what athletes do. So the system was designed to do certain things, and the athletes figured out ways to, when I say cheat, I mean legally cheat, right? They figured how to use the system to their advantage, and there needed to be a little bit of a reset. I think we're in a great time now where there's a balance coming back between speed, power, electronic. I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that there is the whole idea, right? And again, I'm a referee, I'm a judge. The whole idea is that subjectivity shouldn't be a part of who wins. It should be fair. It should be something that is measurable. People should be able to view the sport and be able to clearly understand who the winner is. So I applaud the intentions. I just think that it took a little while, and the execution of it took some time. I'm an old school guy. I'm slow. Strength. I'm a big guy. Physically a big guy. Strength was always king for me. I'll never be the fastest guy, but still, in terms of overall, I go to a lot of events and I see some high level athletes who are fast, who are strong, and who do really, really well. So while I understand the controversy, I think we really are. I think by Paris 2024, people will be really amazed at the dramatic and really positive changes they'll see in the sparring events.
Nice. I'm curious, another one, just your personal opinion. Do you think we'll ever get back and to where we'll see more punching in the Olympic style? Because I know like the tournaments we go to with our school, we are a little more traditional, but we do the sport aspect of it also. But our tournaments, a lot of people score with punches, and it seems like when you watch the Olympics, they never throw a punch. Their hands are down. All they do is kick.
I do think that you're going to see it, and I've seen a lot more of it recently in high-level tournaments. And one of the things I think that people people underestimate is that even if the amount of points that you get with a punch is not great, you can dramatically upset the rhythm and the flow of a fighter with a punch. And a good punch to the chest will really take somebody time to reset from. So I've seen some great athletes come in and use the punch. To me, I think the punch is undervalued. I couldn't agree with you more. And I love to see people who properly execute a good punch in a match. I really think that because of the fact that people don't always expect it, it really throws the competitor off their game.
Yeah, I think one of the first times I ever saw just an amazing punch score in a tournament was a small tournament in central Minnesota back in the mid 90s. And it was a brown belt and a red belt. And it was tied with like 10 seconds left. And I think it was the brown belt just dropped into a perfect traditional stance and threw the most amazing punch ever and dropped this guy. And he did not get out. The fight was done. He knocked him on his spot. It's like, wow.
I refereed a match last year at a sanctioned tournament, but it was probably a state level tournament, and it was two young ladies, and the fight ended the same way. After the punch, the competitor she just couldn't reset, and she ended up bowing out. She couldn't catch her breath, and she just didn't see it coming, and it was a devastating punch. And I said, wow, that's a throwback to old school,
That's awesome. That's awesome. So at what level and when did you get drawn into the teaching part of martial arts?
Okay, so yes, I got involved in the teaching part when I got my second dan, and I've always been around, assisting, helping, but formally certified to teach once I got my second dan, and then became very involved in doing that from the standpoint of teaching, assisting classes, teaching, whether it be my own classes that I teach at the dojang, or whether it be assisting other senior masters. And beyond that, what I began to do as I got into my third dan and approached fourth dan is really, because Poomsae is my area of specialty. I'm not a great Poomsae athlete from the standpoint of execution, but I work very, very closely with the Poomsae athletes because of my understanding from being a referee and my passion for it. I work very closely with the Poomsae team and with the Poomsae athletes. And in the classes, when there's an emphasis on teaching Poomsae, I work a lot on that in terms of helping students get to higher levels in terms of Poomsae in martial arts.
Nice. See, definitely different than my experience. See, I was a super shy person growing up, and I think my instructor noticed that. And when I was a purple belt, he used to have me help teach one-on-one with people. And when I was a purple belt, one time after class, he pulled me aside. He's like, "So I'm giving you your own class." And I'm like,
"Oh, wow.
Okay, sir." And I thought he meant, I'd have like a couple white belts I'd be helping. And he's like, "Be here Tuesday night at this time." And I walk in, and all I see out there is brown and red belts, people like higher ranked than me. I'm like, "Oh, when does my class get here?" He goes, "They're out there there, sir?" And he goes, "Attention, everyone, Mr. Bryant's in charge," and he leaves. I'm just like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And he did like baptism by fire. But the thing is, it helped me get over my fear really quickly, and it made me a better martial artist. And they were all, he told them to listen, and they did. He's like, if they don't listen, give them push-ups. So
That's great. That's
yeah.
great. And obviously his confidence was, he saw something that
I
made him
didn't.
feel that was. So that's great. Sometimes we need people to draw out of us what we don't know we have, and that's one of the things I love about martial arts, and that's been one of the things that I've loved over the years, and being with it as long as I have been, is to see people go from really open up, like a lotus flower, right? So you see people who obviously have a lot going on, and whatever their issues are, whether their issues are social, sometimes people's issues are behavioral, sometimes their issues are physical, but you'll see, and again, I think that's one of the things it's really important is, we have a tendency to judge ourselves against others. I learned this probably because I don't have the greatest, my physical limitations are noticeable. I don't have the highest kicks. I'm not the most flexible, but the best is to judge from where we've come from. And I see so many of the students that if you look at them, you might say they're good martial artists, but if you look at where they came from, you go, wow, that's a real progression. And that's really one of the things that's really made it so valuable for me over the years.
So what do you think then, thinking back to when you first started teaching, what has changed the most about your teaching style over the years?
Okay, excellent question. So, and I have thought about this. I have come from a very traditional background. So I tend to be very very stern, and I tend to be I would never say I'm mean. I love kids, but I tend to be very no nonsense, and I tend to be very serious. I've always tended, but I've come to understand that in terms of being able to relate, particularly to younger students, that for them, it's important for them to have respect, but that we could have a good time also. And I've kind of loosened up a little bit of my teaching style to make myself more approachable, I think, from the standpoint of some of the younger students. It's always important to me that, there's a little bit of an arm's length relationship between the teacher and the students, and that the students understand that you're not there. Yes, you want to be a friend to them in terms of being able to help them, but that we're not friends, socially friends, and that there needs to always be that traditional level of respect. But you can do that in a way that you have a good time and that you make them laugh. And I've loosened up a lot in terms of that. And that was conscious on my part, because especially now that I'm older, so I never wanted to be thought of as just the old mean guy. So I try to make myself more approachable, and it's definitely paid dividends.
Nice. So are you one that disguises games as exercise for the kids sometimes?
Yes. I mean, I tend to focus more on traditional teaching styles. So for me, there's so many different things that you could do. Disguising repetition is a really good way, being able to teach something and reinforce it, but not get them, to be bored, right? And one of the things I think I learned about going from adults to kids is, right, adults come in, they have a serious mentality, they have a longer attention span, teenagers and adults, and they're looking to learn something and they're looking to perfect it. So they're willing to maybe do the same drill. We would do the same drills over and over and over again until you got it right.
Yep.
With kids, they'll tend to get bored. So I worked at, my master has been terrific at working with me on doing disguising repetition, trying to do some of those things, but work them into sort of fun. So you do the basic, then you work it into sort of a fun game or a fun drill. Maybe you do some sort of a partner drill, but you're basically still drilling the same technique, but now you're mixing it up for them. So now all of a sudden they never get bored and they stay on top of it. And, like I said, try to keep it where they're serious, but let them smile and let them laugh a little bit.
Nice. Now, you mentioned trying out kickboxing and stuff. Now, is there any other styles you've dabbled in and researched? And do you?
Sure. I did. My son, one of my sons was a collegiate. He was a high school wrestler. And then when he got involved in Sambo, he was a collegiate Sambo, Russian judo, basically, with, gi, the heavy gi. And so I watched a lot of that. I didn't actually participate, but I used to go to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes that they had to train those guys. So I did a little of that. I've trained a little bit in Kempo, I've trained a little bit in boxing. I've dabbled in a lot of things, hopefully to try to improve my ultimate physicality and my ultimate timing. But ultimately, I always, Taekwondo is my love and my passion, and I always gravitate back to how it relates to my Taekwondo experience.
So do you ever, for fun, just bring some of the stuff you've learned in other styles into like a Taekwondo class for like, hey, we're going to grapple tonight or something?
Absolutely.
Nice.
We've gotten to a stage where, we do some ground defense. We learn, I try to figure out the practical aspects, we try to do, whether it be punch defense, whether it be grab defense, things of that nature that people will have the opportunity to, again, especially when you're in the Olympic side and you're cooking on Olympic style, that type of combat isn't practical per se.
Right.
That's sport, right? So, but to me, people come for many different reasons. Many people come to martial arts, come to Taekwondo to learn how to defend themselves, to learn how to protect themselves, and so try to balance the sparring aspects and things of that nature with some real practical things. And I think you can do that relatively simply, because if you look at the world, most people really don't know how to fight. So
True.
There's going to be simple things, right? Simple kind of punches that people are going to throw, or grabs or pushes, and we work on those. And I think that those are positive things for people also.
And I've had that argument with so many people over the years. They're like, oh yeah, but if you don't do this, and I'm like, 99% of the time, if you get in a fight, it's going to be with someone who's not a martial artist. So a basic self-defense is almost always going to work.
Absolutely. And I think it's more important is to know less and drill it more,
Exactly.
And I think when people, there's so many different techniques you could teach people. But again, like you said, they're generally not going to be the way that people are going to be engaged in a real life situation. And the reality of it is knowing how to do those less techniques really well, I think, is important.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I got a friend who's putting together a women's self-defense class at his work, and it's like a 12-week class, and he's like, what? He's trying to come up with a list of like 15. I'm like, no, just get like 4 techniques and perfect them over those 12 weeks. Just those 4 basic, easy to use techniques, and work nothing but them.
Absolutely. And the other part of it is that, one of the things I loved about martial arts is that, you really do learn. People think it's a cliche, but it's true that, people's level of confidence and people's demeanor and their swagger, you learn when you're better trained, you're less likely to be in a fight. I mean, de-escalation is one of the things we really focus on. We focus on eye contact. We focus on body language. We focus on doing everything that you can, And a lot of people come to martial arts and they say, hey, I want to learn how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of it is when they get into it, what they discover is that they're really good at being able to not have a fight when that time comes. And that's a great thing to work with somebody on.
Yeah, I actually just told a guest that yesterday, but I got into it because I got picked on as a kid, and my whole thing was I'm going to learn to do this and I'm going to get revenge. And since I started training in martial arts at the age of 10, I've been in 2 fights ever in my adult life. So
that's right.
And those I had no choice. So
no, absolutely. And that's it, right? It becomes this philosophy of, it's going to be my last resort. But then again, if that occurs, if I need to fight, then I'll be prepared to defend myself.
Yep.
And I always say the same thing for me too, is, at this point in my life, if I can't defend myself within a very short period of time, then I'm just going to run like hell, because,
yep.
Because I'm never going to sustain it's not going to be one of these martial arts movie fights of, 15 minutes of back and forth.
Yeah, that's not realistic. So what led you to the world of magazines? I'm curious, first of all, just Taekwondo Times, if that was your first one, what led to that, and just talk a little bit about your experience there.
Sure. So I've always been interested in writing. I got involved in, I've traveled a lot through the martial arts. I've always been very, very interested in reading and writing. And I submitted an article to them at the time, which was many years ago. They liked the article. The editor-in-chief at that time called me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing some stuff regularly? I said, yes. So I ended up, sort of moving up the ranks. I became the lead correspondent at Taekwondo Times. There were some changes there that I wasn't thrilled with, but I still was doing my thing. Then I got approached when Taekwondo Life was started. I got a call and they said, we're starting a magazine. And I said, that's great. They said, we'd like you to be involved. And I said, that's great. And I said, I'll submit some articles. And they said, no, we're looking for an editor in chief. And I said, well, I've never done that before. And they go, exactly your story about teaching class. They go, well, now is as good a time as any. And I said, well, if you give me the support, I'll do my best.
Nice.
And that's been going on since 2016. And it's grown. And one of the things that was really, I have to say, visionary about it from the people who started it, Hyunwon Park and Edward Park, they started the magazine, is that everybody was sort of getting out of print magazines. Mm-hmm. And they said, to have credibility, they believed in having a print magazine, and they dove in. And I said, this really isn't probably the right time. Everyone's getting out of print magazines, and they believed in it. And it has been one of the things that has given the magazine great credibility. Nice. So I've learned a lot, and it's grown. And then we started the podcast basically because the magazine is a quarterly magazine. Mm-hmm. We do about 5 issues a year because it's quarterly, and we usually do a special issue. But there's so much that happens in between there that I wanted to be able to use our website and use the podcast to be able to report and feature other items that perhaps would be stale waiting for a quarter. And that's really sort of how it worked out. And we did that 3 years ago. And both of those things have really grown geometrically in that time.
So just to let some of the listeners know who maybe haven't read the magazine or listened to the podcast, in a typical issue of Taekwondo Life, what can people see in there? And then what can they hear on a typical episode of the podcast?
Excellent. So we generally do, like, the magazine that came out for April, May has Jamaican national team coach Tony Bion is on the cover. And we do a story about him. He's an interesting guy, came from Korea, went to Brazil. From Brazil, his father was a grandmaster. He came to New York, studied ITF, then went from ITF to Kukiwan style, became an athlete, became a competitor, then became a coach. And now he's working with Jamaica to build up, it's sort of like the Cool Runnings model, right? They have Taekwondo there, but they really don't have any Taekwondo masters there that can help lead them to the Olympics. And he's doing that. So we usually have one cover story that's a deep feature. We always have news from various aspects of the Taekwondo organization. So we'll have ATA news. We have IOC news from the International Olympic Committee, USA Taekwondo, World Taekwondo, the Kukiwan. People submit, press releases from there. So those are usually somewhat topical. We try to have one or two articles that will relate to physical fitness, whether they be training articles, whether they be articles. I think we have an article this issue about muscle inflammation and how to deal with muscle inflammation.
Oh, cool.
We have an issue about Korean cuisine and why it's so healthy for you. These are all very typical type articles that we have. That are we have an article that is written by someone who's an 87-year-old martial arts master, continuing to practice, about how martial arts has continued to keep him young. So what we've tried to do, the real focus of the magazine has been, one of the things that I wasn't crazy about in some of the prior magazines I worked with, is we didn't want to be a forum for my master is the greatest, right? Because everyone could submit that. And I believe everyone believes their master is the greatest. Otherwise, they wouldn't be training with them. But that doesn't necessarily have great interest across the spectrum. So we look for articles that have relevance to Taekwondo practitioners, to martial artists. We have a lot of non-Taekwondo practitioners that read our stuff. And we try to have high-level content, well-written, good photographs, and of good substance. What I've done in the meantime in the podcast is sometimes we select some of those and we do a deeper dive. We'll select a topic, but we also do things that are more topical, where we sit on the press corps for a lot of movie studios. So we get a lot of screeners for martial arts movies that are out and that are coming out. So we use it as a good forum to do a movie reviews. We cover tournaments all over the Taekwondo world. They don't all have to be Kukiwan or WT. They could be various things, fundraisers. During COVID, we did a lot of articles and podcast features on how COVID was affecting the martial arts community, things of that nature. Wow. Sometimes they're interview driven. Sometimes we get guests. Sometimes they're topic driven. But always, I think the criteria we look for is either about Taekwondo and martial arts or of interest to Taekwondo and martial arts practitioners. That's sort of the bent that we take.
Very cool. And I will definitely put links for all those out there for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then I'm just curious also, I was looking through Amazon, looks like you've written a lot of books. When did that start, and how many, you've written books on all kinds of subjects. So first of all, when did you write your first book, and how many have you done that are on martial arts?
Great question. So I've written a number of books on different topics. From different things that I've done in my life. I actually, from some of my business things that I've done in business, I've done, because I've done a lot of, motivational speaking and I do a lot of compliance and consulting work outside of my Taekwondo life. So there's some books there. I've taken some of the things that we've done in prior magazines, some physical fitness articles some interviews. Those have been the basis for, I've compiled those into different books. But also I've written other things as well. I wrote a book that is a book called The Suffering of Innocence, which I had written a manuscript for. It's a work of fiction, sort of about human struggle a little bit. And I had submitted it to a couple of publishers, and one of the publishers decided to publish it. And then following that, I did an interesting book about, it was actually a nonfiction book about a major company in international company that went through some very, very strange things: bankruptcy, criminality, murder. And that was the rise and fall of H&H Bagels. So yeah, I've written a number of things. I continue to write. I happen to be a big believer in reading and writing. I think that for me, being able to stay involved in things that are going on. But for me, people have different forms of expression. Writing for me is really something that I've had to, like the martial arts. I'm not a natural writer. I'm not a gifted writer, that I've gotten better at it by doing it, by persevering, and by continuing to write.
Nice. So what is some advice you would give someone who approaches you? They've never done martial arts in their life and they're thinking of getting involved. They just want to know, what are some things they should look for in a school and an instructor, and maybe some things to avoid?
That's great. I think that there is such an unbelievable abundance of places to train, but they're not all good. But I think the important thing is, number one, understanding what it is that you're looking for. Am I looking for a place that I really just want to, and again, whether I'm a parent or I'm looking for myself, am I looking for a place where I want to learn certain skills? Am I looking for a place where I'm just looking to get physically fit? Am I looking for a place where I'm looking to learn how to fight or learn how to defend myself? I think those are important. I think it's important to understand the history of the school that you're looking at, and understand the programs, and understand the lineage of it, to go in and speak to the people. What is the culture like? I've been in schools that have very, very gifted fighting that goes on, but the culture really wasn't one of tradition and one of respect. So for me, when I thought about bringing my kids to train, it wasn't a place that I felt comfortable to bring my kids. And I also think that it's really important that you have the opportunity to view and to participate in classes before you make a decision. I think that if anybody is proud of their program and anybody has confidence in their program, they'll allow you to come, to sit, to watch, talk to some of the students, and to participate, take some free classes and see how you feel about it. I think it's very, very important. I think the biggest mistake that people make is to simply go to the nearest dojang or the nearest martial arts school because it's physically close. Physical proximity is important. I think, if you're going to go regularly, you don't want to go to one that's really far away and you're not going to be able to get to, but it shouldn't be the first and only factor. I would check out the reputation of the place, and I would go see a few different places and see what's comfortable for you.
Nice. So now you started in traditional martial arts. You've gone into the sports side of it. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on MMA and the UFC, and are you a fan?
I am a fan, and I'm very involved in the press corps for PFL and for Bellator.
Nice.
And I find it very interesting when we see, like Master Valerie Lareda and people that come from a Taekwondo background and have relative success, because the MMA world is so fixated on judo and jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And I get that when someone comes in who can really kick, they sometimes turn the game on its side. I like it. I think it's people have to understand that it's a different game. It's a different skill set. I have great respect for those people in the way that they fight. But to me, it's not generally in and of itself martial arts. So for me, while I respect their ability to fight, I've been to MMA gyms. I've been to, combat gyms to some degree. Sometimes it's like giving someone a loaded gun without teaching them how to gun safety. I like the traditional martial arts culture because while we teach people to fight, we also teach them to temper it. That's not always true on that side. So that makes me a little bit nervous about people going and studying there. I think it can be a little bit dangerous, but as a form of entertainment, from the form of athleticism, I enjoy it. And being in the press corps, I've had great opportunities to be ringside at a number of great high-level mixed martial arts matches, and it's really a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I've judged about 1,000 pro MMA fights over 3 states over the last 15 years. Yeah, so it is fun sitting ringside.
Absolutely.
So who are some names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Great question. Great question. I think that, of course, it probably, and I, in my 3 years of doing podcasts and in my years of writing, I don't know that there's anyone who's probably over the age of 30 who wouldn't agree that Bruce Lee belongs on anyone's list.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly I would say Bruce Lee. For me, as a young guy, as a young non-Asian guy, Chuck Norris was a huge influence on me. Somebody who sort of gave, the notion that martial arts and high-level martial arts wasn't reserved simply for Asian people. So that for me was really inspiring. I think even to this day, the work he does with Kickstart Kids and I think he's a great inspiration and a great guy. And I had a great opportunity to meet him at one of his book signings, and he could not have been a kinder and more respectful and genuine person. I mean, really, I was more impressed than anything when I met him. Grandmaster Hyunwon Park would be on there for me because of his work with the 1993 11th World Taekwondo Championships in New York City at Madison Square Garden, which was what the IOC used to grant. That event is where the IOC members came to witness Taekwondo that they really weren't that familiar with when they were considering it for Olympic status. Mm-hmm. And his work on that, to me, makes him a pioneer.
Cool.
Who else? Well, those would probably, so I need one more, right?
Oh, it doesn't have to be 4. So some guests pick 2, some guests pick 4. So
yeah, no, I would say I'll give you a modern day guy who I think probably is one of the most dynamic and interesting martial artists who I think is underrated is Iko Uwais in Pencak. I think he is talented beyond, and I think he's got a great screen presence. And I think that, the future for him, depending on what happens in the movie industry, is that he probably could be, at this point, the most talented martial arts movie star in the world.
Wow.
So I would put him there.
Very good answers. Good answers. All right. Is there one philosophy you've learned in all your years in martial arts that just rises to the top? It's super important to you. You keep coming back to it?
Yes. I think that for me, I think it's important, this notion of comparing yourself to yourself and to measure your success and to measure your progress and your progress goals and your achievement goals against your path, not against anyone else, is one of the most important things that I had to learn.
It's a great one. I love that answer. All right. So this one, you can't pick one that you wrote. Do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Oh, that is a great question. My favorite martial arts book. I would say Ronnie Molina wrote a book called Talking to the Masters, I believe it's called. Now I'm embarrassed that I can't remember the title of it. Let me just think for a second. It's Master Ronnie Molina out of Texas. The reason that I love this book is that what he did is he's such a great martial arts fan as well. He's a police officer out of Texas, Sugar Hill, Texas. And he did a book that is a compendium of interviews with people of martial arts from all different aspects of martial arts. It's listening. I apologize. I had it backwards. I just looked it up. Yep. It's called Listening to the Masters by Ronnie Molina. And the book is just one of those books that you sort of can keep with you because it's got so many different people in there. You could read the whole thing through. You can pick and choose. You can underline. And it joins masters of so many different styles. And what really struck me by it was how you could have kung fu masters, karate masters, taekwondo masters, all different people, MMA, and then there are certain common themes that really just tie through all of their philosophy. So that's probably one of my favorites.
Nice. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one. I'm adding it to my list. That's one reason I put that question in there, because I love reading martial arts books.
That's a great book. It's a really great book.
All right, and I think you grew up in the 80s, kind of like me. So I'm curious, do you have a favorite martial arts video game?
You know what? I've never been a video game guy, but I used to play. I think it's called Street Fighter, right?
Yep. Oh yeah,
yep. Street Fighter. I think I used to go to the arcade, right, with my quarters and by my house, and that was one of the ones that I used to play.
Nice.
And I used to enjoy that one.
Good one. All right, favorite martial arts TV show.
Favorite martial arts TV show. I would say Into the Badlands.
Oh, nice. Actually, great answer.
I like Into the Badlands a lot. I got into it and I was like, this whole notion, right, of no guns. And I thought it was unusual. I thought it was visually great. I thought the martial arts in it was great. I love the characters. That is probably, at this point, my favorite martial arts television show.
I think you're my second guest that has said that one. So that's a good one. So, all right. Favorite martial arts movie?
My favorite martial arts movie is, and when I have asked this question, everybody says Enter the Dragon, which I love, and it's probably number 2. Believe it or not, The Night Comes For Us, which is Iko Uwais, and it's Iko Uwais's movie. It's not the movie that he was found, he was discovered in, but it is probably, in my opinion, his best work. The Night Comes For Us.
Okay, I don't think I've seen that one, so I'll have to watch
That's
that.
Probably
one.
Among the most violent movies, martial arts or otherwise, you'll ever see in your life. It's brutally violent movie, so it's certainly not a kid's martial arts movie, but it's a great movie.
Okay, see, in me, that's my Enter the Dragon is usually my number 2 and number 3. My number 1 is always Karate Kid, because that's the reason I got involved in martial arts.
Sure, and I think statistically, if you look at martial arts enrollment, probably other than Enter the Dragon, Karate Kid is probably the number 1 reason that people entered the martial arts in this country.
Yeah, I was having that conversation yesterday. It was like, Enter the Dragon started a boom. Karate Kid had even a bigger boom. And you jump ahead about 6-7 years, and it probably had Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers combination.
Absolutely.
And then we haven't really had one since then. I'd love to see.
We definitely have seen people who've come in because of Cobra Kai. Absolutely. We've seen, I don't think it's been, the floodgates, but also part of it was COVID at the same time. So it's maybe a little hard to judge.
True.
But definitely heard students talking about, hey, I saw this on, they want to do like Cobra Kai and things of that nature.
Okay, cool. All right, final question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Do you have a favorite movie fight scene of all time?
Oh, wow. Yes, actually, I do have a favorite movie fight scene, and that is Scott. It is a martial arts movie. Scott Adkins and Amy Johnson in The Accident Man, the first Accident Man.
Nice. Okay.
That is.
I need to
that
rewatch
is
that.
That is a great scene. That scene kind of harkens back to Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, and there was the fight scene in Wheels on Meals,
Mm-hmm.
Wheels on Meals, Meals on Wheels. I forget the name of the movie, the Jackie Chan movie.
Yep.
Very, very similar style, but that's a Jesse V. Johnson movie. Action, and that fight scene is, you sit there, he's going to fight Amy Johnson. She's a martial artist, but you're like, all right, he's male versus female. It's a terrific scene. It's fun to watch. It's visually great. It's one that I could watch that scene over and over.
Nice. And I tell you, whenever someone mentions Sammo Hung, I always the one, in my opinion, one of the most underrated TV shows of all time, Martial Law. I wish that show would have lasted. Such a good show.
Absolutely terrific show, and he's great. And he's another one of those people that, like, even if the vehicle isn't good, if Sammo Hung's in it, you can watch it because it's, he's going to always be good in it.
Exactly. Cool. Well, Marc, I want to thank you, man. First of all, anything else that we didn't mention you want to make sure I get out there?
No, I'm really happy to speak to you. I love your passion for martial arts. I checked out your site. It's terrific. I think it's great. I'm really honored to speak to you today, and I hopefully we'll get to meet in person in our travels.
That would be wonderful. I truly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.